Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pitt Post-Game Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts, Chris Carter, myself, here with Noah Hiles. Pitt has lost this game. We're here at the Peterson Event Center against number 8 North Carolina, 70-57 in a tough loss. We're going to go through our good, bad, and our ugly here, but first, I want to remind you this show is sponsored by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go to Mike's Beer Bar to experience one of their 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Western Pennsylvania area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap at all times. Go to Mike's Beer Bar for the best experience on all of Pittsburgh. It wasn't the best experience for Pitt in this game, especially shooting. We're going to get to our good, bad, and our ugly. Noah, start us off. What's a good thing here?
I'll go with two goods in the same category because I don't want to steal anything from you. But I'm going to go with Pitt's freshman guards. I think this was probably the best backcourt Pitt has faced all year. Yeah. I mean, you've got a first-team All-ACC guard, maybe an All-American, the leading scorer in the ACC, and R.J. Davis. Cormac Ryan, a very veteran guard, and then a five-star guard. I forget the kid's name.
Triple.
Yes, Tremble. But, I mean, there's a lot of experience, a lot of skill, a lot of, I would say, even size. And the two best players on the floor today for Pitt were two true freshmen. Jaland Lowe continues to get better. I wouldn't be shocked if he actually does end up in the starting lineup sometime sooner rather than later, just because of what he brings to the floor and what he brings to the floor with Bub Carrington alongside him. I really liked how they played together. Carrington, I think, while he can get everyone involved as a point guard, I think he's better off at the two maybe because he's able to shoot well from the outside and get to the lane a little bit more and just focus on his scoring. I mean, Carrington scored 20 points. He shot effectively. He gets to his spots, especially in that mid-range area. And Jaland Lowe gets other people involved. Really liked what I saw from both of them. They were the two best players on the floor for Pitt today. What about you, Carter? What's good for you?
My good was the defense, which I know people are going to look at the game and think, oh, man, Pitt played terribly. They shot terribly, and we'll get to that in a bit, but they played very well defensively. 70 points allowed to North Carolina in a game where you shot terribly on your own end. That is the lowest amount of points North Carolina has scored all season. And they've played some bad teams just like Pitt has, and they're the number 8 team in the country, one of the best scoring, the best scoring team in the ACC, and they limited to 70 points. I thought the attention was there. It was attention to detail. They were covering up things. They were denying a lot of things down low. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, Fede Federico, I thought, had inspiring efforts underneath there. And also the guards. I thought everyone from Bub Carrington to Jaland Lowe to Ishmael Leggett were challenging guys outside, not giving up easy lanes to the basket. And when they got there, Pitt had quite a few blocks in this game. And I thought that was a good effort. And you need efforts like that against teams like this to be able to be in those games. And, if this was a game that was like their game against Syracuse, where their defense wasn't present all game, they would have struggled. They would have been blown out the building. That didn't happen because of their defense. And I personally challenged them in my post-game analysis of the Syracuse game, especially the forwards, to go out and be better against an Armando Bacot-led team, and they were. Bacot didn't destroy them this game. He won. They did end up losing the game, but this was a better defensive effort and something that if Pitt can key on for the rest of the year, they'll have better days. But they lost this game. We have to get to the bad. I'll lead here. My bad was Blake Hinson. And it's not that he's lacking any effort here, but he's just shooting terribly right now. Over the past 3 games, he is 9 of 38 from the field. That's 23.7%, 3 of 22 from deep, and 6 of 12 from the stripe. Those are just unacceptable shooting efforts from your star scorer. And Jeff Capel made it very clear. It's like, I'm not pounding my team for effort and fight. They gave that, but we have to shoot better. We have to hit our shots. That's been a big difference point. Blake Hinson has been the star that's propelled this team. And Coach Hubert Davis for UNC after the game said that he's the guy that energized. When he hits a shot, everyone on that team starts playing better. And for 3 straight games now, Blake Hinson hasn't been that shooter, and Pitt has not found a way to work around it. I think that's a big problem. Noah, what's your bet?
I want to also just note one thing that you mentioned about the defense. You mentioned about North Carolina's schedule. They've been able to average over 86 points a game, having played a very tough non-conference schedule. They beat Oklahoma, who was undefeated, I think, prior to that loss. They've played against Villanova, Tennessee. I mean, they've had a really tough schedule, and the fact that they've been able to tally 80, 90, 100 points against those teams speaks a lot to what Pitt's defensive effort was today. But my bad is, you highlighted Hinson, who's been a bad shooter. I'm going to go with the other guy, Ishmael Leggett. I mean, these were the two guys that were supposed to be the top two scorers for Pitt this season. And while it's great that Carrington and Lowe are getting better as the year goes on, and Carrington might actually be the best player on this team, that's not what Pitt needed in order to be a tournament team. It needed Blake Hinson to come and lead the charge like you saw, or like what you talked about, and it needed Ishmael Leggett to be the leader in this backcourt. And you highlighted Blake over the last 3 games. Ishmael Leggett the last 3 games, 7 of 27 from the floor. That's 25.9%. He was 1 of 5 from 3. That's 20%. Only 5 3-point attempts, Carter. And then 3 of 4 from the foul line. That's 75%, which is good, but that's 4 free throw attempts in 3 games. So he's not shooting from the outside a lot. He's definitely not getting to the foul line a lot. And that's a guy who, in previous videos on this very YouTube channel, Chris, we praised for his ability to attack the basket. And he's not getting to the foul line. Part of that is what Jeff Capel talked about in the postgame, that he's dealing with an injury right now, something that occurred Saturday afternoon in Syracuse. He hasn't practiced since then. He was questionable to play. And that explains why he was, shaky today. What did he shoot? 2 of 6. And, those 2 makes were the first 2 shots made of the game. So 0 for 4 for the rest of the contest. But, how do you explain 2 for 10 against Syracuse? How do you explain 3 for 11 against Purdue-Fort Wayne? So that's a concern. When your 2 top guys are slumping together like this, you're going to have a tough time scoring against anyone, and those numbers are reflected in Pitt's play. I'll bring us into the ugly. And, and Blake Hinson talked about this last week. This team has no identity right now. That's not to say it's hopeless. There are a lot of things this team can do well. I think it rebounds the basketball well. I think when it's hitting its shots from the outside, it can be one of the more dangerous three-point shooting teams in the country. But right now, it doesn't do anything. It's not doing anything consistently. It's not defending consistently enough. It's good for a half, or even when it's good for a whole game, its offense isn't good enough to take advantage of that defense. It's not shooting well enough consistently from the outside. I don't know if it's a guard-led team, a wing-led team, a Blake Hinson-led team. There's just no identity to this group right now. And we're in 2024. Happy New Year, by the way. But we're in 2024. It's a new year, and this is crunch time. And they've got to figure it out soon.
They do have to figure it out soon. And I think it's a big emphasis. I share in the ugly part of this with, this is a team that's losing in various ways. And I think that's the big problem here is that when you look at Pitt right now and you look at the way they lost to Syracuse wasn't the way they lost to Florida or how they lost to Clemson, and the way they lost tonight wasn't the way how they lost any of their games. And that's the problem that you see there, is that it's popcorn. It's problems here, it's problems there, and those are sometimes the hardest things to corral, because that's not something you can just at one point just coach out of it and just say, hey, we got to stop this, we got to get this out of our game, and then something else pops up and you're like, okay, it's like whack-a-mole trying to play catch up and figuring out what's your problem each week. And also, we got to remember, this is a young team by a lot of respects. The Diaz Graham twins are sophomores. The 2 freshmen that they brought in are still learning, and they need their veteran guys who have been battle tested to step up, and that's where Blake Hinson and Ishmael Leggett, underperforming, are really going to hurt the team, because those are the guys that are expected to lift the team. Fede Federico, I thought, played better in this game, but still isn't nearly the presence he was last year. I thought he was closer to that in this game, but that was a problem. And my full ugly here is the start of their ACC efforts this season. They're 0-3 in the conference, and granted, 2 of the teams that they played are definitely tournament teams, Clemson and North Carolina. Those are 2 of the better teams in the country right now. Syracuse, not as much, and that was why it was disappointing to let that game get away. If they beat Syracuse, this loss feels a lot worse, because this was the number 8 team in the country. A lot better, right, yeah. But this was the number 8 team in the country. This loss, like I see some people saying, like, oh, this was a terrible loss. I'm like, they got worn down by an older, more experienced, more talented, more well-built North Carolina team that is going to be one of the best teams in the country. And we're going to be watching in March Madness, doing a lot of damage. I don't think that this particular loss was terrible. I do think them starting 0-3 is put this team in the hole. That makes, I mean, Louisville was always a must win. It is a must win. If you lose to Louisville, this season spirals out of control, and we start talking about like how similar vibes to how Pitt football spiraled out of control. Right. We don't want to bring those things up, but point being, this has been an ugly start to the ACC schedule. They can work their way out of it, but it takes one game at a time. And I think part of it is fixing the problems that they see in front of them. They saw their shooting was a problem. They got to work to hit their open shots. And Jeff Capel brought up, these were naked open shots. These weren't hoisting up. These were well organized, well executed plays to get those open looks, and they just missed them. Sometimes you can't overcome that, but they better overcome that against a team like Louisville.
I don't know how you could say it any better than that. Look at him. He's out of breath.
Not at all.
You know.
I can go hey, I got another podcast to do after this.
I know you do. You know, that's... All right, as you can tell, we're getting a little slap happy. We're a little tired from the New Year, or at least I am. This guy doesn't ever get tired. So we're going to wrap it up. For Chris Carter, I'm Noah Hiles. Thanks for tuning into our post-game recap. That's the good, bad, and ugly. We'll see you Saturday in Louisville, Kentucky.